Hello students, we'll continue again with unit number 2 and topic number 2, which is detailed construction planning and role of client and contractor. Detailed construction planning. A construction management plan is a document that encompasses or entails detailed information on mechanisms, tools, resources, and the knowledge transfer which is necessary to deliver complex construction projects. So the plan enables project managers to determine project feasibility and develop resource schedules that align with the goals and objectives. It further facilitates efficient project resource planning and management. With an organized plan and schedule, managers can be held accountable and ensure that the workforce is committed towards timely and quality accomplishment of the construction work. Next, construction management plan. The first point under construction management plan is we have to define the project scope. The project scope is inclusive of the project goals and objectives, deliverables, features, financial tasks, and deadlines. Defining these variables builds the foundation of your construction management plan. Next point is resource capacity planning. Once the project scope is in place, the construction management plan should have a resource schedule ready. So building the right team to accomplish varied tasks is crucial to get a head start on the construction project. Managers must therefore assemble the right workforce and allocate the right task to them to avoid any potential bottlenecks in the future or problems in the future. So capacity planning before project execution also provides enough window to the manager to recruit the resources well in advance and eliminate delays. Third point, phase design and budgeting. The overall project plan must be divided into small phases or small projects. This will enable decision makers to track the progress at every stage conveniently. In addition, designing each phase facilitates accurate budgeting as the management practices and methods to be employed are explained explicitly. So phase designing and budgeting is vital to get an estimate of the total revenue that will be generated. It will also facilitate managers to assess the feasibility of the project. Next point is stating the interdependencies. So, enunciating tasks and their interdependencies on other departments is a must in construction projects. That's because construction projects operate with cross-functional teams and coordination is required between every team for the project success. Thus, the plan created by the project manager helps them supervise the construction planning and ensure that projects are completed on time. These are the essentials of a construction project management plan. Of course, managers can configure the plan as per the projects and requirements. Next, steps involved in detailed construction planning. Number 1. Document the scope. A comprehensible scope outlines the construction project's goals and purpose in terms of its value and benefits. It is a compilation of both the stakeholders' and clients' expectations and inputs. After diligent analysis of every input, a scheduling plan for the construction is developed. In addition to this, a project scope explains each and every team member's roles and responsibilities in detail. It also includes the project's time frame, financials, methods, and techniques to be employed. Moreover, it consists of factors that may adversely affect the project's progress. Number 2, draw out a work breakdown structure WBS. A work breakdown structure WBS, as the name suggests, is a deliverable-oriented breakdown or bifurcation of projects into smaller tasks. Drawing out a WBS allows project managers to categorize the projects into manageable chunks. They can schedule and allocate the right tasks to the right resource at ease. One of the major benefits of designing a WBS is that it enhances task management efficiency and helps managers ensure uniform allocation of workload. A WBS is therefore necessary to help project managers track the project's progress at every stage. This will help them implement corrective measures in case of any discrepancies. 3. Feasibility Study. A construction project depends on environmental, social, and financial factors. A shift in even one of these can impact the project's progress. Before beginning the execution, project managers must meticulously assess every factor. They should also analyze if the project is prone to environmental hazards or if the project will be profitable enough. This careful evaluation This careful evaluation constitutes the feasibility study. Before investing the resources, their time and the project cost, conducting the feasibility study is necessary to ensure the project's success. Number 4. Cost and time analysis. Major construction projects cost thousands of dollars to your firm every hour. So a slight delay in the timeline can eat into your organization's profitability. So managers can prevent these setbacks from happening by running an extensive cost and time analysis. This is only possible when they have centralized visibility of the project task and resources booked to complete them. With a unified view, project managers can calculate the resource and equipment costs, which will help them calculate approximate total revenue. Thus, cost and time analysis is crucial to ensure that projects are delivered within time and budget. Note that employee leaves, holidays, buffer time must be taken into consideration when analyzing the timeline. Number 5. Quality control and risk management. Stakeholders and clients have to be specific with the project quality they want. This quality is clarified in terms of material and the final output. The onus is on project managers to ensure that this quality is maintained throughout the project life cycle. More importantly, a risk management plan has to be in place when you are dealing with construction projects. This is because these projects are not only prone to time and cost overruns, but also pose safety risk. A construction management plan therefore must have a contingency plan and quality control audits. 6. Documentation of communication plan. When a project pivots on cross-functional departments, transparent communication and coordination are imperative to ensure smooth functioning. If one team faces a challenge, it can communicate and notify other departments who are dependent on them. This way, curative steps can be taken in time to avoid delays and further roadblocks. So these are the steps to be followed to document a systematic and well-organized construction management plan. The next topic is role of the client and contractor, and below it the subheading is client role before the construction. Number 1. Budget allocation and cash flow insurance. 2. Concept study and verification of intended outcome. 3. Bidding or tendering procedures, that is evaluation and award. 4. Selection of EPCC contractor or contract agreement signing. 5. Kick-off meeting, and 6. Approvals from authority if any. Client role during construction. So design review and approval in some cases. 2. Progress review meetings. 3. Frequent visit to project site. 4. Invoice verification and payment. 5. VTC or change order review and approval. 6. Major vendor finalization. 7. Punch listing and QHSE auditing. And number 8. Commissioning and taking over of project. Client role after construction. Number 1. Operation and maintenance of the project. Number 2. Complete payments released to vendors and EPCC, which includes retention. Number 3. Approvals from authority. And number 4. Ensure availability of warranty and spare parts. The next topic is role of contractor. Responsibility of a contractor in construction is the execution of the work activities that are required for the completion of the project. The roles and responsibilities of contractors manifest themselves in various aspects of the project, for instance, project planning, management, monitoring construction site safety, and legal issues. So the contractor also appoints subcontractors who have special expertise to execute certain parts of the project that cannot be constructed by the contractor. Subcontractors involved in construction processes based on services that they provide in the course of a construction project. A contractor is a person or an organization hired by the client to complete the project. In summary, the roles and responsibilities of contractors have many different levels since they carry out a broad range of tasks and manage numerous individuals. The roles and responsibilities of contractors may be slightly different from a project to another, but the general roles and responsibilities of contractor are nearly the same, which are presented below. That will continue in our next class. So give your name and enrollment ID in the chat box. That's all for this lecture. Thank you.
in construction activities. So now planning is the process of drawing up a scheme of action or execution in advance, foreseeing the likely future developments. In construction industry or in planning for a construction project, it could involve choice of technology. It could involve defining the work tasks. That is, we break up the project into individual jobs or works. So as part of the planning exercise, we try to break the project down into different jobs or different tasks. Then there is this aspect of estimation of required resources. We break a job down to different activities, different tasks, and then try to find out for each task or job what are the resources required in terms of manpower, equipment, consumables, and so on. The estimation of duration is a very, very critical part of our planning exercise. We must know whether a project is going to be completed in 10 months or 20 months or 2 months. So in order to be able to do that effectively, accurately, we have to have an idea of the resources that are required and whether or not by just increasing the number of resources or just increasing the resources that we allocate to a particular activity, can we keep reducing the time? It may not be possible sometimes to reduce the time beyond a certain point. Identification of interaction among different tasks. This is a very critical part of our understanding when we try to understand or when we try to analyze whether we can take up one task without completing some others. Which tasks in a particular project can be independently taken up? If one process requires another process to be completed, for example, in the kind of boundary wall example that we talked about, we cannot fabricate the angle unless the angle has been procured. We cannot fabricate the reinforcing bars for the footing or the columns unless they have been procured. But once they have been procured, we can go ahead and fabricate the reinforcement cage for the footings or for the columns. So basically, identification of interaction, determining the interdependencies is a very, very important part of project planning. Now, every stakeholder in a project carries out their own planning exercise, and it is important to ensure coordination. So we know that, we've talked about it at the outset of our discussion in this course, a project has different stakeholders. There's the client, there's a contractor, there's the designer, there's possibly a person who's financing the project. So all these people, they look at the project from different points of view and carry out their own plans. So now their plans can be looked upon as focusing on the quality sometimes safety, sometimes manpower, sometimes equipment, sometimes time itself, and so on. So now looking at the emphasis in construction planning is either schedule-oriented or cost-oriented. In the schedule-oriented side, we have time and resource orientation, and in the cost-oriented construction planning, we are most of the time talking about direct and indirect costs associated. Now, we talked about the different types of plans. It could be the time plan. So basically what we are talking about here is the schedule. How much time it is going to take to complete an activity. If we are slipping, then what should be done to cover the time and so on. Then there is the cost plan. How much is the project going to cost? What is the kind of cash flow that we need? If we want to accelerate the project, try to complete the project earlier, what is the kind of cost that we need to incur or additional cost that we need to incur and so on. Then there's the quality plan. A project has different activities. If you consider a tunneling project, there is a boring of the tunnel that has to be done. There is a stabilization of the soil that has to be done. Independently, we are making segments which have to be then brought and assembled at site. So now each of these activities has to have a quality plan. We should know what are the parameters to control as far as quality is concerned for each of these activities and have a plan so that the people who are executing those activities are aware of what are the quality control measures to be adopted. Similarly, there has to be a safety plan. we must make sure that there is no accident at site. There's a manpower plan. Depending on the time of the project, different kinds of people, that is, people with different skills, are required. And we must know what is the kind of people that are required at different points in time, so that we are able to either recruit them into the company or transfer them to that site from other sites, and so on. Then there is a materials plan, equipment plan, and a finance plan. So there are different ways of looking at the planning exercise. So continuing with our discussion, as far as the project plans are concerned, time plans basically refer to completing the work ahead or later than scheduled dates may make remarkable difference in the project completion. That we have an estimate of completing the project, but there may be a bonus associated with completing the project earlier. There may be a penalty associated with completing the project later. So these are things which we have to keep at the back of our mind when we are carrying out a planning exercise in terms of time. Of course, as I said, it will affect the overall cost of the project. As far as the cost plan of the project is concerned, since they take a long time to complete, it is obvious that all the funds are not required at one point in time. So we have to keep in mind the concept of cash flow that we've talked about. And contractors often fund their projects from working capital, a part of which is raised from investors, bank loans, whereas the rest comes from mobilization advances and running account bills. So all these things have to be carefully thought about and foreseen. So foresight is a very, very important part of a construction manager's job. And that's why some of these things are difficult to appreciate unless there is a real example, unless there is real experience that you have. So the idea as far as this course is concerned is to basically introduce you or expose you to some of these ideas so that you're better prepared for professional experience. Now coming to the quality plan and the safety plan, the focus on the quality plan is to ensure that the resource procurement, construction procedures and tolerances are within the set guidelines provided by standards of relevant agencies. So this relevant agencies is very important because depending on the agency involved, there would be different tolerances. That happens because the criticality of each of those projects or each of these activities is different depending on concepts like consequence of failure, importance of the structure, and so on. The emphasis in the safety plan is to ensure no accidents. We must ensure that there are no accidents at site which could lead to loss of life and property. If we talk about the manpower plan, it mainly focuses on estimating the workforce and deployment of manpower in appropriate functional teams with an emphasis on optimizing cost and time. As far as the materials plan is concerned, the primary emphasis is to identify, estimate, procure various materials of required specifications by minimizing their idleness in inventory. We must remember that the effort should really be to procure the material in time for its deployment or use at site. There is no point in buying the material way in advance before it is used, because that is dead inventory, that is dead cash. We should invest the money only when it is really required. So an inventory plan requires us to know exactly when a particular component or a particular material will be required as far as construction is concerned. And then taking into account the time that it takes to procure the material. Some of these materials or components may not be readily available just off the shelf. So there would be a certain time for the manufacturer of those materials to put that thing together. There may be a time involved as far as transportation is concerned. So your inventory team has to have a plan of how and where these different materials will be procured from, how they will be transported to site in a manner that their non-availability does not become a reason for delay in the project. As far as the equipment plan is concerned, effectively this plan focuses on procurement of suitable and productive equipment by purchasing, renting or leasing in a manner that minimizes the period of idleness of operating them at site. So we should know when we need cranes, what size cranes, we should know what size of welding equipment, we should know what size of concreting equipment, we should know what kind of JCBs or excavators, and so on and so forth. Now, before we proceed further with more analysis of planning and scheduling, I would like to also introduce to you the idea of a work breakdown structure. Now, this WBS refers to a hierarchical tree structure obtained through decomposition of the project into phases and tasks. We basically try to break down, as the name suggests, we break down the project into activities and sub-activities, try to divide it into different classes, and then try to look at the resources required for each activity. We must remember that the more thorough WBS, better is the planning and smoother is the project execution. If we are able to foresee exactly how the project is going to be executed, we will be in a much better position to execute the project smoothly. If we are not able to foresee certain things, then the project will be stop and go. Something will happen which is unforeseen. The project will stop. We'll make some stopgap arrangements, make the project get started again, and so on. Whereas if we have seen all the possibilities, we know exactly the flowchart which will be followed. If this happens, then what should be done? If this happens, then what should be done? Then the execution is much more smooth. And that can be achieved if we have a clear breakdown structure with all the kinds of possibilities worked out. Now, this is what I mentioned. The project is broken down into manageable chunks. We are working from a whole to parts kind of a philosophy. And this basically is a framework for planning, scheduling, estimating, budgeting, monitoring, and controlling the project. So all these important functions relating to a project can be carried out if we have a well-planned and a well-done work breakdown structure for that project. Now let's try to see what a work breakdown structure really means through an illustrative example where we are asked to list the activities and create the WBS for a road construction project and also discuss the interdependencies of the activities. So what we are talking about is a project where a road construction has to be carried out. And what we will try to do is to break down this project into activities. Of course, we'll stop way short of what is a final breakdown structure, but I think you will have some idea about it. As far as a set of activities is concerned, let's say there are 8 of these activities: tree cutting, general excavation, grading general areas for leveling, excavation for utility trenches, which is services, compacting the subgrade, installing sewer lines, which is services again, installing electric poles, which again services, and finally laying the pavement. So we have broken down a project of pavement construction into these 8 activities. I must point out at this stage that this is not necessarily the only way in which this activity breakup can be done. It depends on the engineer actually as to how he defines the different activities. Now, another way of drawing up a work breakdown structure for this project would be as shown here. So we divide the road construction into general, structures, and carriageway. As far as general is concerned, we talk in terms of mobilization, supervising, financing accounts. As far as structures are concerned, we break it up into culverts and bridges, where we say that, well, culverts are further broken down into excavation, concreting, and reinforcement work, and a similar such structure can be drawn up for bridges. And when it comes to the carriageway, again, there is earthwork, mixing and paving, markings, median, plantation, etc. So this shows different ways of how a work breakdown structure can be drawn up for a given project, and this facilitates planning. So when we talk of culverts, we can draw up a plan. When we talk of markings and median plantation, we can draw up a plan, and so on and so forth. So going back to the previously defined 8 activities, now let's try to see what is the precedence relationship. What is the kind of relationship that governs one activity with respect to the other? Now, as far as tree cutting is concerned, it does not require any preceding activity, except of course, what it assumes is that something what is called land acquisition has already been completed. So unless of course the land acquisition has been completed, there's no question of cutting trees. In fact, if you read literature as far as road construction is concerned, you will realize that actually land acquisition is often a bottleneck as far as construction work in highways is concerned.